The Pittsburgh Pirates lost another series, this time to the Milwaukee Brewers. And folks, something's got to give.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. My name is Ethan Smith. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. And of course, folks, welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on Thursday, May 16th. And a lot of people in the Pirates scope, a lot of Pirates fans would probably really like to forget that game that we watched yesterday against the Milwaukee Brewers. Pirates, once again, in a scenario where they could have won a series against an NL Central team and just get boat raced, for lack of a better word, against the Milwaukee Brewers on Wednesday afternoon, losing 10-2 in that ball game. Obviously, Andrew McCutchen homers, Connor Joe gets the sacrifice fly. Robert Gasser had a phenomenal game. Robert Gasser, I think, could be a problem in this division for quite a while, not only for the Pirates, for pretty much everybody, because that kid looks like he has a phenomenal pitch mix, a power throwing lefty who loves to throw glove side. I think he's going to have a lot of success. The Brewers, by the way, in that game, obviously homer off of Martin Perez 5 times. That was a career high for Perez in his career. Just not a great day at the office for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And that's almost become something that we've been saying quite a bit as of late. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And the Pittsburgh Pirates right now, they sit at 19-25. They're about 7.5 back of the NL Central lead right now, obviously in the middle of playing the two teams that are above them in the Chicago Cubs and the Milwaukee Brewers. But when you break it down, as I almost just broke something trying to grab a pencil, when you break it down to a science here, the Pirates just have a lot of different negative things going on right now. You look at the bullpen shakeup that we talked about yesterday with getting rid of Roansy Contreras and Josh Fleming, and then you insert Ryder Ryan and Carmen Mlodzinski back into the fold, kind of resetting everything. You get rid of Quinn Priester, who was having a pretty decent season in his second run in Major League Baseball, but I do understand it. He does have the options. Option him while you can. So they're back to a 5-man rotation. The bullpen should be a lot healthier now. Obviously, Chapman and Bednar are those two guys that you want to see eventually become more consistent in the back end of games, because those are the guys that are supposed to be winning you games. So we'll see what happens with that. But almost any argument that you make about the Pirates right now and what they are doing all goes back to the offense. That is just what it goes back to, and that has been the Achilles heel of this team for the majority of the season. Yes, I'm saying the majority of the season now. Yes, I remember when they were 9-2. Well, since then, they're 10-23. They are not playing good baseball, folks, at all right now. And you guys have heard my friend Gary Morgan, who I have on the show every Monday and almost Monday co-host at this point, mention a lot of times that this is a 500-like team. They're going to have stretches where they look good. They're going to have stretches where they look bad. We're in the middle of one of those bad stretches right now. And going back to the offense for a minute, I think the big thing that we're starting to see from this offense is that you're starting to see the guys that are actually going to produce kind of separate themselves a little bit from the guys that aren't. You look at the O'Neal Cruzes of the world, who has had a very good string of things over the last couple of weeks. He's really picked it up. I think he's actually starting to get a lot more confident in that ankle that he broke last year. I think those couple of times that he's taken a little bit of nicks here and there, he kind of has realized, oh, my ankle's fine. I think that's something that we're seeing from a guy like O'Neal Cruz. You've obviously seen Connor Joe do phenomenal things. They were mentioning on the broadcast yesterday that he started in 31 of 44 games. I expect that to change quite a bit moving forward. I think he will be starting more often than not. Top 5 on the team in at-bats right now, and he needs to be because he has been their most consistent hitter. You obviously saw Brian Reynolds on Monday go 5 for 5, or was that Tuesday? It was one of the days. One of the days that they played, he was 5 for 5. But really, when you consider all this, you have the Brian Reynolds of the world, you have the O'Neal Cruzes of the world, you have Connor Joe, even Andrew McCutchen homered yesterday, and he's picked it up quite a bit as of late from that leadoff spot as well. These are guys that need to be in the lineup every single day. They need to be involved somehow because your offense scored 2 runs on Wednesday, scored 3 runs on Tuesday, and obviously had that big 8-run game on Monday. Sound a little bit familiar? Well, let's go back to the weekend against the Chicago Cubs, the team, of course, that the Pirates will be facing this upcoming 4 games. 4 runs on Sunday, 10 runs on Saturday, 2 runs on Friday. So the offense has its days. It has the days where it comes and shows up. But then it goes right back into what it seems like it's been doing throughout this entire stretch. And you may be asking yourself, is this a talent issue? Is this a coaching issue? Is this a upper management issue? Well, we're going to get into all that in the third segment of today's show because I'm going to give my thoughts on the Pirates as a whole. But when you break things down to just a game-by-game basis, which is very hard to do in baseball because things just change ever so much. Yesterday, in that 10-2 loss, the Pirates featured 4 players, 4, who got a plate appearance with an OPS under 600. Jack Sawinski was a pinch hitter in the game or a substitute. He has a 548 OPS. Jared Triolo, 0 for 3 on the day, 515 OPS. Michael A. Taylor, a guy not really known for his offensive acumen, 539 OPS. I'm okay with Taylor being in the lineup because he brings some defensive versatility and brings a lot of good defense in center field that the Pirates desperately need out there right now. And then Rowdy Tellez pinched hit to end the game. We know enough about Rowdy Tellez, and I think his time will be coming to a close sooner than you might think. But when you break down this stretch and what's been going on with this Pirates team, folks, they've won one series. One since that opening day series against the Baltimore Orioles at home. That's how many series they've won since. And you heard me mention earlier that they're 10-23 in their since they started 9-2. And that one series win that they got was against the Colorado Rockies. It's not exactly good. I mean, the Rockies are a team that is just flat out bad. I mean, you have series losses in there that include the San Francisco Giants, who are a below 500 team. You have series losses in there that include the Oakland Athletics, who are a below 500 team. You have a series loss to the Boston Red Sox in there, obviously just above 500. You have a series loss to the LA Angels, who are last place in the AL West. And a lot of this, again, boils back down to the offense. The pitching has been there. I know Perez had a bad day yesterday. That is not going to be something you will likely see from Martin Perez again. Yes, I know his expected ERA numbers and other numbers could say it could happen again. You will not see him give up 5 home runs in one game again this year. That will not happen. Pitching is going to be the driving force of this team. It just is, and it has been. We did not expect that coming into the year this year, but it is what the team is going to ultimately ride on for quite a while. But this offense has to be more consistent, period. That's the sentence. You can put it in the comments. You can put it on Twitter. Put it everywhere. The Pittsburgh Pirates offense has to be more consistent, comma, period. That is exactly what needs to happen right now. Because again, there was no winning that game yesterday. The Brewers offense just tagged Martin Perez and the Pirates relievers, and that was that. There was no offense that was beating the Brewers offense yesterday. There was an offense that could have beat the Brewers on Tuesday. There was an offense that could have beat the Cubs on Sunday. There was an offense, really, I know that game was 7-2 on last Friday against the Cubs, but there was an offense that could beat that Cubs team that day. There sure as hell is an offense that could beat the Los Angeles Angels. And it just has to be more consistent, and that starts, as I've said on this show plenty of times, with playing the right guys in the right places at the right time, which should be all the time. Brian Reynolds should be in the lineup every day and is. Connor Joe should be in the lineup every day and usually is. O'Neal Cruz every day. Kutch right now every day. Nick Gonzalez right now every day. And you guys already know the players that shouldn't be there. Rowdy Tellez, Alika Williams, Jared Triolo really is only here right now to play third base, but he has underperformed a lot in terms of what we've seen from him. And when Ke'Bryan Hayes comes back, I think that's what you're going to start seeing, is you're going to start seeing the Pirates really start to find a consistent lineup that they need desperately. And until that happens, I mean, yeah, you look at this Cubs series and you look at some of the pitching that you see and you say, yeah, the Pirates could have success here. Chicago's pitching is pretty good, but they could have success because they have arguably their four best pitchers going in this series, especially three of their best four going in this series against the Chicago Cubs. So you should feel good about that. But as Pirates fans, do we? Do we feel good about that right now? I don't think so. But what we do feel good about is that at 7:40 Eastern time tonight, Jared Jones will face off against Justin Steele. And then on Friday, Paul Skenes will make his second start against Kyle Hendricks. What can they build on from their previous starts versus the Chicago Cubs from last weekend? We're going to talk about Jared Jones and Paul Skenes here in just a moment. But before we do, folks, let's talk about Game Time. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply to that, but Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the game you want to go to. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. By the way, they even have ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, and you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you even buy. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off, and download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And folks, thank you to Game Time, of course, for being a wonderful sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. And as Pat McAfee and the boys would say, the Hundo boys are going over the next 2 days against the Chicago Cubs on Thursday and Friday. It will be Jared Jones and Paul Skenes going back to back again, much like they did over the weekend against the Chicago Cubs. Jared Jones obviously was credited with a loss in his outing. Paul Skenes did not go far enough in his outing to get credited with anything. So it was a no decision for him. And you want to go back and just look at the lines that were set for these guys in those games. Jared Jones, obviously, against the Chicago Cubs, 6 innings pitched, 7 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. Paul Skenes obviously had 4 innings pitched, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, and 7 strikeouts against those Chicago Cubs. And they will go against the Chicago Cubs again these next 2 days. And I think that the big keys that you're going to see from Jared Jones and Paul Skenes in these games, we'll start with Jones. Jared Jones in that game, he's had issues with the home run ball. We know that. Only gave up the 1 homer, I believe, in that game as well. Obviously, only allowed 2 earned runs. The bullpen kind of let that game get out of the way. And there were some guys that had some success against Jones in that game. Miguel Amaya had a hit. Cody Bellinger had a 667 average, had a just phenomenal Friday. That was the home run that Jared Jones surrendered in that game. Michael Busch, Ian Happ, Nico Horner, Christopher Morel all had hits off of Jared Jones. Meanwhile, the Pittsburgh Pirates against Justin Steele actually have some pretty good success against Justin Steele. I mean, O'Neal Cruz is batting .400 against him in 5 ABs. Connor Joe is batting .600 against Justin Steele with a 1.567 OPS and 3 RBIs and 10 at-bats on his career. Kutch struggles quite a bit against Justin Steele, batting .118. Michael A. Taylor is batting a perfect 1,000 against him. But for Jones, I think that the keys for him are just the keys that have been what they've been for him all year. Is against this Cubs lineup, you want to attack early, especially at Wrigley Field. You want to get ahead in these counts against this offense. This is an offense of the Chicago Cubs that, it has its moments. This is an offense that you look at and say, okay, you have the Cody Bellingers of the world, you have the Ian Happs, you have the Christopher Morels, and they are coming off of a series loss again in this series. They were coming off of a series loss at home against the San Diego Padres before that series on the weekend. They're coming off of a series loss against the Atlanta Braves, where they only scored 7 runs in 3 games. So this has been an offense that has really struggled quite a bit for what we could see, and obviously shut out in 2 of those games against the Atlanta Braves as well. So this is where you want to see Jared Jones and Paul Skenes, especially with this team in the slump that it's in right now, kind of take on the onus and take that on and say, we're going to get this out of here and we're going to win 2 straight games. That's what you would love to see. Now we'll see if that eventually happens in these next 2 games with Jones and Skenes on the mound. But I think for Jones, it's just using the fastball slider combo that he's used all year. I think he needs to just stay ahead in counts, limit base runners because he usually does get in trouble with base runners, and just try to limit the home run ball as much as you can. That's been Jared Jones's biggest Achilles heel this year, if he even has one. He does have one in his body, but not in his play. And he's been phenomenal this year. And that's all you can really ask out of him. Now, for Paul Skenes, he obviously did not go as far as I think that the Pirates or he wanted to go to in that game. Created a lot of his own issues, obviously, in that game with walking batters, the amount of hits that he gave up. Obviously, I mentioned 6 hits in that game. And his pitch counts just got pretty high. He had the 7 strikeouts as well, had never pitched more than 75 pitches in a professional game. Up to that point, he went 86 pitches, I believe it was, on Saturday. By the way, still one of the best moments I've ever had at PNC Park was seeing that man debut. So going into this one on Friday, and we'll talk about this a little bit more on tomorrow's episode as well, I think it's imperative for Skenes to keep the base pass empty in this game against the Chicago Cubs tomorrow. Attack like he did before. He obviously was able to do a very good job at attacking Chicago's hitters, obviously, again, with the 7 strikeouts. Just try not to walk as much. And you really go back and look at that Skenes start, too, and he didn't even really have his stuff, like the stuff that we're accustomed to seeing from Paul Skenes from his LSU days and what we saw in the minor leagues. So we'll see if he can kind of get a better gauge on it. His command on his fastball was a little off as well, but he was still able to use his secondary pitches in that outing as well. So I think that that's something that you can expect from Paul Skenes in this upcoming outing against the Chicago Cubs. Very interesting, too, that his first 2 career starts are against the Chicago Cubs. And I even think it's interesting for Jared Jones because he'll remember what he did on Friday against the same Cubs team. He'll likely see a very similar lineup that he saw on Friday. Same thing with Skenes. He'll likely see a very similar lineup on Saturday. And I think that that can both be an advantage and a disadvantage because that also gives the Cubs offense a little bit of an advantage of saying, well, we just saw these guys a little under a week ago, so we kind of know what we're seeing. And then going back to the Pirates offense for a second, they saw Justin Steele pretty good that day when Paul Skenes was pitching. Now, albeit there were a lot of emotions in the building and a lot of pent up just adrenaline from Skenes debuting, but they saw Justin Steele. They saw Kyle Hendricks, much like the Cubs saw Jared Jones and Paul Skenes. So we'll see how that becomes a factor at Wrigley Field as well. But for Jared Jones and Paul Skenes, again, I think it's keeping the base pass clear for the better part of the year outings, just getting ahead in the counts, using your strikeout pitches when you need to use them, making sure the fastball command is there because they're very similar pitchers. Very similar pitchers, which is why eventually I would like to see them not go back to back because I do think that for other teams, it's almost like facing the same kind of guy. Now, obviously, they are different in their mechanics. They are different in how their stuff moves, but they are very similar pitchers in terms of their style. So we'll see what that does in this outing, especially with their outings against the Cubs being so recent. I wonder how that's going to affect things, but I do think that more often than not, you're going to see Paul Skenes and Jared Jones have good outings, and I think that's what we should come to expect, especially against the Cubs offense that, as I mentioned, only scored 7 runs over the past 3 days and 12 over the past 4. So something to look at and something to keep an eye on. But there's some things I want to get off my chest about the Pittsburgh Pirates right now, and I'm going to give my thoughts on the Pittsburgh Pirates as a whole in the final segment of today's episode of Locked On Pirates. But before we do that, let's take a word from FanDuel. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is also brought to you by FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel.com/LockedOn for all of your betting needs this baseball season because it's winner take all right now in baseball and in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props like strikeouts, homers, hits, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook and, of course, an official sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. And folks, thank you to FanDuel and Game Time for being wonderful sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you also check out Locked On Sports Today, where you can find your 24/7 sports fix from the local host of Locked On, sharing their analysis and news on everything going on in the sports world. And there's been a lot of chatter lately about this Pittsburgh Pirates team, the organization as a whole. We all remember the big piece that came out from The Athletic just before the season started about disgruntled management and ownership and all this other stuff. And we're going to leave all that alone. My thoughts on the Pirates as a whole right now is that they are on the uptick. They are a team that right now, yes, I know it's frustrating. Right now, they are a frustrating team to watch. And you can look around at the farm system. You can look around at what's to come. And they have a lot more fun coming. You look at names like Anthony Solometto and Bubba Chandler and Termar Johnson, Xander Muth, Thomas Harrington. There's a lot of names that come up in prospect lists, a lot of names that we highly tout. But I want to shift the focus a little bit to what is here now and what that means moving forward. Brian Reynolds, we'll start with Brian Reynolds. Got that extension, phenomenal baseball player. Is he ever going to be more than he is? I don't think so. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong with that. If Brian Reynolds is going to be the guy he is through the duration of that contract, fine with me. Mitch Keller has had his ups and downs this year, but he's still a valuable piece of this pitching staff and will be throughout the duration of his extension. Ke'Bryan Hayes is dealing with a back issue, something he's probably going to deal with throughout his career. Pirates knew that. He knows that. Still a very valuable glove at third base. When the bat is on, that's a plus. Then you look at O'Neal Cruz, a guy that I think will be in the conversation to get an extension after this year, especially if he continues to go on the uptick like he has over the past couple of weeks. And I think he's going to continue to be the driving force of that offense. Those are the good things. You have good things around this team. Connor Joe is a good thing that is controlled for a while. Paul Skenes and Jared Jones will be here for quite a while. To all you people that want to say Skenes is going to be on another team, well, enjoy it while he's here if he is. The big issue that I think the Pirates have right now, and that could continue to be an issue, is that their weaknesses are weaknesses that are almost detrimental to any kind of success that you would like to have. And you look right now at those weaknesses, and the offense as a whole is a weakness. But when you break it down positionally, first base is a weakness. It has been for a while. We've seen them go out and get the Daniel Vogelbachs of the world and the Rowdy Telezes of the world. Carlos Santana, who I still wanted back, but whatever. You have to eventually find some consistency at that spot. And they have it. Connor Joe could bring that consistency. He's 31 years old. He can continue to keep playing through 2027, which is until he's here. That is as long as he is controlled by the Pittsburgh Pirates. But they eventually have to find a consistent, long-term option at the position. They have not had that in a very long time. Then you shift your focus to the outfield, a group that I thought had the potential to be one of the major strengths of this team after Michael A. Taylor was selected in free agency. He's been good defensively. The outfield defense as a whole has been garbage. Edward Olivares has had his struggles, but shown upside. Jack Sawinski just doesn't get enough consistent playing time to ever really find consistency. And again, Michael A. Taylor just isn't an offensive guy, and Brian Reynolds is your best offensive option out there. Name me an outfielder in the system that you trust to come up here and really make an impact, though. Matt Frazier? Matt Gorski? Lonnie White? Yeah, the pitching is great. They have a lot of pitching in the system right now. The middle infield system, pretty good. I mean, you have Nick Gonzalez. You still have Peguero. Triolo's a great glove to have in the infield. Alika Williams as well. O'Neal Cruz. Termar Johnson eventually. But at some point, you're going to have to trust management to pinpoint the weaknesses of this team and fix them. Do we trust them to do that? Because you look at Ben Cherington's trades throughout his tenure as a Pittsburgh Pirates general manager. They're not all that great, folks. Some of them are, like the Jose Quintana trade. If Oviedo comes back and continues to perform, it's a win. But now that you got rid of Roansy Contreras, that Jameson Taillon deal looks terrible. The Carlos Santana deal, we won't know about that for a while. Josh Bell's trade was awful. The Starling Marte trade produced Liover Peguero. That's about it. Yeah, you got David Bednar from the Padres and Jack Sawinski. You've gotten pieces from trades, but you haven't gotten a lot. But at some point, the Pirates are going to have to search outside of the organization for their weaknesses. And we have no choice but to trust Ben Cherington and the front office to make the right decisions for this team, because let's all remind ourselves that they said that they wanted to start competing this year. It's a very broad subject because what is competing? We don't really know. But at the end of the day, what I want to say to all of you about my overarching thoughts of the Pirates as a whole is you have Paul Skenes, Jared Jones, O'Neal Cruz. They have a lot of young talent that is eventually going to come together and start winning baseball games more often than not. The biggest question about all of that, though, is the manager going to be here? Is the general manager going to be here? And what coaches are going to be here when it eventually hits the climax? It's a great question. And Pirates fans, much like myself, and I don't show it a lot on this show, are getting frustrated. We haven't seen a playoff appearance in almost a decade. We've seen losing season after losing season after losing season for the past 6 to 7 years. We're in year 5 of this. So at some point, the needle has to turn. And we'll see when that eventually happens. But right now in front of us, the Pirates have 4 games against the Chicago Cubs. And a chance, really, if they can somehow win at Wrigley Field, to kind of change the tone a little bit, because the tone right now is dull and really negative. And that's coming with Paul Skenes debuting not even a week ago. And it shouldn't be that way. But folks, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. My name is Ethan Smith. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Find this show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms every Monday through Friday for all of your Pirates content. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you know when Locked On Pirates is coming your way. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll be back tomorrow to talk a little bit about Paul Skenes' second start and some more Pirates content. But until then, I'll see you on the flip side.